Now let's move to the next topic after managing the communication. Now this session will discuss implementing the risk responses. So welcome to this session on implementing risk responses. Even the most well-planned project encounter risks that require an immediate action. While risk identification and analysis occur in the earlier project phases when you are doing the planning phase, this session will focus on executing and implementing the risk responses that you have identified during the planning. And to ensure you have, let's say, implementing risk responses effectively during the project execution, we'll explore how to implement the planned risk responses, understand the difference between the contingency plans and workarounds. Also, we'll learn how to dynamically adapt risk responses to keep the project on track. First, let's understand what is risk response and execution, or what is implementing a risk response. So, risk response execution ensures that the planned mitigation, avoidance, or transfer or acceptance strategies are probably implemented. The risk responses must be proactively managed to be effective. And the implementation of these risk responses should follow the risk response plan that you have identified during the planning phase, where you kept all of the risks with their, let's say, mitigation strategies and information at the risk register. Ensure that you have already assigned a clear ownership of the risk responses to ensure the accountability of implementing these responses. The key ITTOs we have here is the inputs, including the project management plan, the project document, the OPAs, the tools and techniques we have here, the expert judgment, the interpersonal and team skills, also influencing and project management information system. You may also, the input here, when we say that project management plan, think as the risk register as part of the project management plan, where you have kept all of the risk responses, the risk owners, and you have all of the probability and impact, also the monetary value for each of these risks that you have saved on the risk register. The output here would be change request if needed, if you wanted to update any risk response or implemented any risk response. So you need to keep all of these risks, risk register updated. Also the project document updates if needed. The types of risk responses that we have already discussed. Risk responses differ based on whether the risk is a threat or an opportunity. We already have discussed how to deal, or what are the strategies to deal with threats, focused responses such as avoiding or mitigating, transferring or accepting. When it comes to the opportunities, the focused responses here, it's like exploit, enhance, share, and accept. Remember that the responses must be aligned with the risk severity and based on the impact on the project. To remind ourselves on each of these, let's say, strategies. So we said when you are dealing with a threat, avoidance is like eliminating a specific threat by changing the project plan or approach to remove the risk entirely. The next strategies we talked about is mitigation. Mitigation is like reducing the probability or impact on the project when it comes with a negative risk through a specific prevention or preventive actions or contingency planning. Next, we have transfer. Transfer is like shifting the risks to another party through, let's say, purchasing an insurance or hiring a contractor, to handle that risk. Also, outsourcing. Also, it comes as part of these transferring the risks. Finally, we have accepting. Accepting is like acknowledging the risk and decide to take no action on that risk. Often, when the risks is low in terms of, let's say, probability and impact, also, or the mitigation costs are higher than, let's say, the potential impacts, so you accept to do nothing about it. The other hand, we have the opportunity focus. So the first one here is the exploit. And here like you take a direct action to ensure the opportunity is realized and maximized. So in case that you have identify an opportunity, you work with the team to make that happen. So you can take the let's say the positive outcome of that let's say opportunity. Next, we have the enhance. Enhance is like increasing the probability and positive impact of an opportunity by identifying and maximizing the drivers. So you try to enhance that event from happening. In case if you have, let's say, maybe you have a risk of delay on one of these regulatory approvals, and you know that in case that you can send someone to the regulation office, and in case that they can maximize the process and they can help you by getting the approval of that regulation faster. So you need to utilize this opportunity to let's say to enhance that risks, and then when you resolve it, then you eliminate that risk completely from your risk. We have also share. Share is like allocating the ownership of an opportunity to a third party who is the best positions to capture its benefits. Same as the threats, you have this acceptance or accepting the opportunity by recognizing an opportunity, but choose not to take any proactive steps. So let it happen. If it happen, it will be good for the project, and keeping the options open for future actions. Now let's see contingency planning versus workaround. So contingency plans and workaround serves different purposes and risk responses. For example, in data center migration project, if server failure is identified as a risk, the contingency plan may involve, let's say, such as an actions like activating a backup servers. However, if unforeseen cyber attack occurs, a workaround might involve deploying an emergency cybersecurity patches and increasing the firewall protection on the fly. Contingency plan are predefined responses for identified risks. Okay, so think that you have um, uh, a risk that you have identified during the planning phase, and you already have, let's say, a predefined responses or already a response that you have discussed with your team or with the stakeholders, whoever is accountable for handling that risks. So it's predefined response for the identified risks. When it comes to workarounds, it comes when there is unplanned responses for unexpected risks, and both requires resource allocation and tracking. While contingency plans are proactive, the workarounds are reactive. Proactive, if you recall that we say that the actions can be taken to prevent something to happen, and the workarounds here is reactive. Reactive is like the issues happen and now you have to deal with it, and it requires fast decision making. Implementing the risk responses effectively. So, simply documenting risk responses is not enough. They must be executed, tracked, and measured. So, ensure to follow the risk response plan as defined during the risk planning. Ensures that the risk owners will take the accountability for the execution, and you also need to use this risk audits and risk register update to track any changes. So it's not just about just documenting these risks and writing mitigation plans. You need to ensure that all of these risks, responsible person and accountable person to handle it for the execution. Also, you need to ensure that you are monitoring whether that risk severity is decreasing or increasing, whether that you need to change your mitigation plan. So it's just not about writing it, it's about ensuring that it's been implemented and monitoring, let's say, the impact later on in the project. So regular risks audits help the project teams to verify whether risk responses are working as intended or needed or need a refinement, for example. Monitoring and adapting risk responses. So risk responses must be flexible and adaptable. What we mean with this is that you cannot just set, let's say, a mitigation plan before 6 months, and you expect that it might have the same, let's say, output or impact on the project. So you need to ensure that these risk responses are continuously assessed and evaluated based on the project nature. Also, you may use key risk indicators or KRIs to track its effectiveness. Adapt the strategies based on the new information and new adaptation within your project. And for instance, here, let's say that in an aviation safety project, if new risk factors such as the pilot fatigue emerge, companies may need to update the training programs, increase the rest periods, or introduce automation enhancement. So again, we say that monitoring risk responses should ensure that the strategies of implementing these risk responses remain relevant and effective as the condition changes. Common challenges when you are implementing the risk responses in execution. So, one of the biggest challenges in risk responses execution is the lack of ownership. The lack of ownership will lead to, let's say, unexecuted responses, and that will for sure impact the project. Also, the next challenge here we have is the insufficient resources to implement the risk strategies. So when you are, let's say, uh, planning for your risk responses, ensure that you have the enough resources, accountable person to handle that risk and implement that risks. Also, delays in decision making during the crisis situation. These delays will for sure, let's say, impact the project as overall if that risk materializes. Probably assessing risk responses roles ensures the accountability and timely action. For example, here, let's say in a software development project, you may identify the risks as unexpected security vulnerabilities, but fail to assign a specific team to handle the security patches. As a result, when it's an issue arise, the response might be slow, leading to data breaches. So when such scenarios you have when it comes to unexpected security risks, and you fail to assign a specific team to handle it, and maybe you don't have enough resources to implement that risk response, that will cause an issue, and that issue will impact the whole project outcomes. The tools and techniques for risk response management. So we talked about the risk register to track the response actions. Also, there's automated risk tracking software which helps in response monitoring, as well as the scenario planning, which helps testing the responsive effectiveness. Technology can streamline the risk response execution, not like before. Before that, you had to hire someone who takes care of all of these risks and keep monitoring them closely. But nowadays, when technology has evolved, now you can leverage these tools like Jira or Risk Watch to help you monitoring the risk in real time. Using these tools ensure a faster decision making and reduces the manual errors. Here are the best practices for dynamic risk adaptation. Projects operate in dynamic environments, and organizations that embrace a risk aware culture perform better. So, ensure within your organization to foster a risk aware culture in your teams. Also, encourage early reporting for emerging risks. Finally, review and refine the risk responses periodically to adapt with the dynamic, let's say, changes within your project or within your organization. And to have an example here, let's say that in an airline operation, the pilots and the crew are encouraged to report minor safety concerns before they escalate into major issues. And this culture of early reporting allows companies to refine the protocols and prevent accidents before they occur. To summarize our session on implementing risk responses, we say that it's an ongoing and dynamic process. By implementing, tracking, and adapting risk responses, project managers ensure risks do not trail the project objectives. We talked about the risk response execution or implementing, including for threats and opportunities to ensure the project resilience. We have seen how contingency plans and workarounds serves different roles. We also talked about the importance of having continuous monitoring to help adapt the risk responses effectively.